Hello, it's my great pleasure to introduce this fireside chat with His Excellency Zulfikar Gadiali. I'm Bertrand Badré. I'm based in Washington. I'm also an impact investor. But Zulfikar is a multifaceted technocrat, actually a fascinating person, technocrat, businessman, entrepreneur. His business interests and acumen span different countries and many different sectors across major continents. I was fascinated when I read his bio, and I had the pleasure to briefly chat with him ahead of this session. He is also, it is very dear to me, a social entrepreneur and a social innovator who aspires to create a significant social impact on countries and their citizens, which is really something which has been dear to my heart for many years. And I'm very excited to have, thanks to the Toronto Global Forum, this opportunity to engage with you. Zulfikar, very happy to meet with you.
It's indeed my pleasure, Bert. Thank you so much for the elaborate introduction, and look forward to a great conversation with you today.
Yes, thank you very much. So my first question is going to be a little wide open, if I may. I think with the COVID, many people have spent a lot of time locked at home, and they started to think about the famous world after. So you have the capacity to look beyond borders at different systems, different types of businesses, etc. If I can start with a broad question, what do you think are the major changes that impact your business as an investor today in 2020? I wouldn't say after the COVID, but because it's probably too early to say that, but as of today.
Well, first of all, nobody planned, nobody knew something like this will come. Last year, around this time, we were all getting ready and preparing ourselves for the Expo 2020, which was a game changer for the history and the future of the UAE. And while we were doing that, we never anticipated that something like this will hit us. But like they say, future belongs to people who understand the today. And that's what we did. And we immediately, of course, well, it was a big shocker. It was a big, like a monster in front of us, all of us. And we decided to take it head on. And we decided to counter the challenges with swift action, with seriousness and total commitment to keeping the life normal and not to have inconvenience on citizens of the country as much as we can. And for that, there was a very honest attempt that was required, and hats off to the leadership of UAE for actually taking interest and taking care of taking the initiative to making sure that UAE recovers. And I think it was one of the first countries to reopen, and that the credit goes to the ruling families of the UAE and the Prime Minister, as well as the Crown Prince of Abu Dhabi, His Highness Sheikh Mohammed bin Zayed Al Nahyan. So it's a great thing for us in UAE. Besides, what I can say is we've had a lot of challenge in terms of two things. One is the oil prices going down, and secondly, one of the second and the most important source of revenue being tourism. That was majorly hit. So, but UAE was quick to adapt, and we realized that we could still play a very major role for financial services, fintech, and all the new emerging technology. And in fact, now today, even during the pandemic, I would say we launched 3 large incubators in Abu Dhabi and Dubai. And they say Dubai never sleeps, and UAE never ceases to amaze people what it can do. And we quickly adapted to the reality of life, and we immediately attracted a lot of fintech companies, a lot of cryptocurrency companies. And not that those things just happened overnight. There were a lot of planning which was already on from several years. But it all came together because people realized the safest place which emerged was the UAE actually to go for. And that's what saved us in a major way in terms of the revenues and to sustain the pressure on oil and gas sector as well as on the tourism. So win, lose somewhere, we lost somewhere, but we won somewhere else. And that kind of kept us in a good shape. Besides this, the augment and the advent of Abu Dhabi Global Markets, which is attracting a lot of capital these days, owing to its jurisdiction and owing to its comfort of English common law, which is attracting a lot of entrepreneurs. And also it is a gateway to Africa and India, which is one of the biggest marketplace in our neighborhood. Yeah. So it's a differentiator that it created automatically, and here we are today.
Well, thank you very much. Of course, you have to adapt to changing circumstances. You mentioned the drop in oil price, obviously, and tourism, which are two critical elements for the UAE. Yeah, if I speak about oil, I mean, one of the recent events in the US has been the removal from the Dow Jones of Exxon, which was seen by many as a symbol of a transitioning economy. To what extent do you think that COVID will accelerate the move to an economy where fossil fuels will have a lesser role? And how can you play that with your expertise and your technological forward-looking perspective? The so-called green recovery, Green Deal, sustainable development, etc. I think it's something which is very dear to your heart too.
Absolutely. I mean, in fact, UAE was the first country which, amongst the oil-producing countries, I mean, it takes a lot of, guts, and it takes a lot of conviction to come out and say that by 2030, we'll adhere to the commitments made under the Paris Agreement towards the Sustainable Development Goals. And the fact that the UAE has committed itself and taken upon the challenge by themselves that we will cut down on fossil fuels by almost 60 to 70%. And imagine this is the second largest exporter of oil and gas. Says something like this, which is a big statement. The UAE has always been a trendsetter. It doesn't matter where their commercial interest lies. It's a country which thinks of humanity first. It thinks this whole planet is our family. And that's why the ruling families and our president and our prime minister and our crown prince have taken very conscious efforts towards ensuring that UAE moves towards renewable energy sources. In fact, one of the largest solar park and composite solar plus wind farms are coming up in Abu Dhabi. One of the very large park is already operational in Abu Dhabi now. So, yeah, it's on its schedule to achieve its goal for the 2030, I would say. And pandemic, yes, of course, it has created a lot of attention towards this. I see a lot of countries reaching out to us as well to look at investment opportunities across solar, across wind, and across all kind of clean energy technology like the nuclear power plants, like going for wind energy, sea wind energy, also for solar energy. So we see a lot of trend moving much faster now. But UAE always had that vision. So there was never a course correction when it comes to adhering to the SDGs, for the UAE. Exactly.
Well, thank you very much. Another area of interest which I've seen in the many things you are undertaking is your focus on social entrepreneurship, social innovation, social impact. I'd be very keen to hear more about this. Post-COVID, I mean, the COVID has been a hit on many countries, has been a hit on many poor people in many countries. How can social entrepreneurship make a difference after COVID, and how can we bring this to scale?
Yeah, I mean, it's first of all, thank you for this question, because this is something very close to my heart personally as well. And it's not that because of the COVID I learned this lesson. Even if you look at my speech at World Economic Forum a couple of years back, I have been one of the firm advocate. I'm not an activist. I will never call myself a climate activist, because I believe that there's always a timing, and it's always been a work in progress. I'm not saying that we suddenly woke up after pandemic that, oh yeah, we need to think about the world, or we need to feed the poor, or we need to work for the drainage, or we need to work for the water and electricity. It was all work in progress. So I am against the activism. There are some kids who are activists world over nowadays. They like to, talk very aggressive languages, but seldom aggressive languages get you anything done. It's the efforts on the ground that actually makes a difference. And I think there have been efforts, there have been very conscious efforts that have been on the ground. And I believe that from my perspective, I am a firm believer of agriculture and the technology which can be married with, because I believe in working for the last man standing in the queue. Everybody is fighting, all the big brands of the world, all multinational companies, all fighting for that 35% of the urban pie, while everybody seems to ignore the rural pie, which is the 65% of the world even today. So I want to empower this 65% of the world population and put the money in their hands so that they become your consumer. and it's a win-win situation. You've put the food on their plate, and then you bring them in the mainstream by bringing them into the banking sector. You completely have to bring them under a formal sector by giving them bank accounts, by giving them digital payment solutions, by bringing them in the mainstream so that they become consumer for education, for healthcare, for housing, and that's how you expand the economy. What else do you do to expand the economy? So I am not a fan of capitalism. I'm not a fan of socialism either. I'm a fan of welfare economy which works for everyone, you know, and that's what I do. All my investments across board and all my initiatives across board have been focused on welfare economics.
Thank you very much. I must say this is music to my ears, and I hope you will be joined by many in the coming weeks, months, and years to make a real difference. Let me move. You're really acting as a bridge between many places, in particular between the Middle East and India. I'd like to have your views briefly, given the time we have, on what's happening in the Middle East today, and also what's happening in India. These are two places of the world where a lot is happening. It's true that during COVID, many people are focused on their own country and tend to pay less attention to the rest of the world. But one of the beauty of this forum is to expand your perspective. So if you could say a few words about the Middle East and India and the connection between two, that would be great. Thank you very much.
Sure. Thank you so much for this question. Well, originally, genetically, I am Indian, and this country has given me everything that I am today. And UAE is a country where I have grown into my stature, where I am today in terms of my work and my career. So both these countries are very close to my heart. Middle East and India, I think this relationship is not just of last 10 years or 20 years, but it's a 3,000-year-old relationship, And this relationship has always thrived on coordination and complementing each other, and not competing with each other. For example, UAE today is one of the largest exporter of investment, and India today needs that capital because it's the best country which is on the verge of growth. It's the biggest marketplace after China, and we all know with China, it's a closed economy. Not everybody has a fair chance out there, but India is a country which gives you this fair chance, and it's a democratic, it's a vibrant country. And I'm also excited about this new trend, which is this in UAE's relationship now with Israel. And I think this is going to be a game changer for not just today or tomorrow, but for the future in a very long term. And I'm trying to create a golden triangle here with Israeli technologies and UAE's capital and India's marketplace to create a scalability for Israeli technologies and to get maximum return for the UAE's investment. So I think, and why UAE becomes more important is because it's a country which has, it's not a tax haven, but it has all the benefits of a particular tax-friendly jurisdiction. And also it's a country which has a currency which is pegged to the US dollar, which is, the pegged currency. So there is no hedging risk. And today's volatility, the hedging risks have gone so high. So it's a perfect place, a marketplace for East meets the West. So the Indians meets Africans meets the European in the Middle East, And I think coming in from Israel, coming into UAE, from India into Africa, we are capturing almost 2/3 of the world, in terms of the reach and expansion of the business. So I think this is a fantastic opportunity for companies from around the world to set up their base in Abu Dhabi and UAE, and from there expand into Africa and India with the support of, the beautiful tax-friendly jurisdiction and a comprehensive, friendly and a bilateral relationship that UAE enjoys as an OECD treaty signatory. So I think it's a fantastic opportunity where, we are working towards creating a marketplace for the investment, because you may have all the investment, but you need a marketplace. So that's where India becomes a very important marketplace for UAE. And I happen to be into the middle of all of this action because my family office, my personal family office, is one of the largest real estate developer in India. And it's always been one of the biggest manufacturer of steel and various commodities. So I do have a lot of respect within the political class and the economic class in India. That kind of helps me navigate the whole 9 yard of the pestle analysis that we call. So yeah, it works perfectly well for us.
Well, thank you. Maybe given I'm based in Washington and we have elections coming, and you have interest in the US and North America, do you have any view on the potential outcomes of the US election next week?
I've been saying it from past 1 year, and even before that, and I'm very confident that it's going to be a red country again. It's going to be Donald Trump again.
Okay, maybe a final questions or final comments. I'm also European. European is facing a second wave of the COVID. I think India is still in. The US are about to face another one, and the mood of the people is more and more depressed. First question, are you optimistic vis-a-vis everything we've just discussed and you think we're opening a new era, or are you more cautious and pessimistic? And if you're optimistic, how would you share your optimism vis-a-vis the people which are listening to us today?
Well, I believe, yes, and of course, going back to the month of March and April, there was a lot of fear, there was a lot of chaos. People didn't know how to control it. People had no idea how this works. There was a lot of stigma around it. There was a lot of superstition around it, and everybody would do everything that their forefathers taught them about cold and cough. They just thought it's just going to be another cold and cough, just another epidemic. But I think moreover, what happened was due to the passage of time and more discussions and more of media, we are in a situation where now people seems to know that, okay, we need to wear the mask, we need to sanitize ourselves, we need to ensure that nothing goes internally into our bodies. That's it. So, and you have to maintain the social distance with people. With this, I think people are confident now that they can live with this new normal. They can hide their face behind the face mask for some more time, and they can meet virtually like we're doing right now. And the business is as usual again. At least in UAE, as I see, people are following great regulations, all the discipline that has been put by the government. They're cooperating with the government, and the business is as usual now. We are back to work. And in India, there are two types of people. One who are actually following the same thing, and there are some who feel nothing can happen to them because God is with them. And religion is an opium for masses, so that also works in a lot of ways. And I think people should not lose hope, and they should focus on self-development and self-care. That's the only way I've motivated myself. A lot of my friends and people I see around me, they have gained a lot of weight. In fact, I'm the one who lost 5 kilos of my weight personally. I believe that people should work towards themselves, and there is no excuse for not working out or keeping yourself physically and mentally alert. Recently, we also launched a book which was written by my wife. It was all focused on mental health and how do you manage yourself during this crisis, how to adapt to the new normal, and how and why it is okay to be at home, and operate. I mean, it doesn't make a difference as long as you're doing the right thing, as long as you are a valuable contributor to the economy. So I think people need to understand that this year the biggest profit, as Jack Ma said, your biggest profit this year is your life. If you have saved it, you achieved a super profit this year. So I think people should focus on just taking care of themselves, and everything else is a bonus.
What basically prevents you from sleeping at night, if anything, and what makes you so excited that you say, I can't wait?
Well, I just want to control the madness which surrounds around being number one. That is my fear, not just today, but always in my life. Because people, they think they want to be number one. Everyone wants to be number one. And I have a different take on it. I believe the day you're number one, you're closest to zero. And you have nowhere to go but to fall down again. So I think everybody's in the race for being number one, especially one of the countries in India's neighborhood, which is trying its best to become number one and ready to compromise on everything that they can possibly, and I don't think so that is going to get them very far. And that country is giving a lot of stress to a lot of people in the world today because of their aggressive nationalism and aggressive policies of dominating the world, And what fears me more is that there is lack of transparency and democracy. And if that trend catches up, it is not going to be very good for the world, And I'm a little bit comprehensive, concerned about that fact. But on the other hand, I believe that there is still a lot of goodness in that country. There are still a lot of good people. And still there is a lot of amazing, wonderful people who really care for this planet, who really want to benefit the last man standing in the line. They really want to contribute to the social index. I believe the world needs to focus now on the social impact into investment. They need to focus a lot and lot on the poor people, the people who do not have the food. I mean, we're talking about mission on Mars, mission on Moon and Sun and Saturn's, but nobody talks about the food and the hunger and all the possible charitable trusts and foundations. They are from past 70, 80 years talking about all the kind of good things they've done in Africa. Why still we have 70, 80% of the Africa still poor and hungry and scarcity of water? That means there has been lack of seriousness. And that's where the opportunity is also. Bring these people in the mainstream, give them what they deserve, not just they want, but they deserve it. And then see, world will be a beautiful place. You need not do destructive things anymore. You can do good things and still make money for everyone.